Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Manhattan's Upper West Side of New York City, this is Wisdom of the Sages. Today, I'm your host, Kaustubha, and our friend Raghunath is taking the day off, right, Mara?
That's right.
What's he doing with this time?
He's going to go for a bike ride.
Huh?
He's going to go for a bike ride this
He's going
morning.
for a bike ride, okay, before it rains, right? You got to get it in. Okay, he'll listen to the show afterward, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Raghunath is, because sometimes Raghunath and I decided after doing tons of interviews where we're both trying to interview someone and pulling the person in opposite directions, that it might be good if just one of us interviewed people. And so we're kind of going back and forth. And today I have the great fortune of interviewing our guest today, Kripamoya, who we'll bring on in a minute. But before we do that, Mara, do you have any announcements today?
I do. We have Bhakti recovery group meetings today at 1 and 7:30 Eastern Time. And also Wisdom of the Sages. We're holding our annual fall retreat, October 11th through 13th, up here at Super Soul Farm in upstate New York.
Always fun.
Yeah, it's a great time. So go to wisdomofthesages.com to register.
Part of the magic of the autumn retreat is that at that time of year in upstate New York, it's very beautiful, right?
Yeah, it's incredible.
All the leaves are changing.
Yeah.
So, but it's always a nice time to get together.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to mention, again, yesterday we opened up our signups for the next session of Sage Groups, which runs from September through December, you know, that period. Already, we opened it up at 9 a.m., so less than 24 hours ago, yesterday, and 64% of the slots are filled.
Wow.
There's about 300 slots and 64% have been filled. So again, if you want, and you know what we do is like, as we get closer to the, to like them all being full, we are responsive to like, oh, I couldn't find a time that worked for me or something like that, then we'll try to adjust. So, but for now, if you want to get in the group of your choice, the sooner you get in, the better, because already it's 2/3 full.
Wow.
We just started. Okay. So for that, if you want to sign up for Sage Group, life change, you know, we're going to talk to Kripamoya Prabhu about this because he takes a lot of interest and is very experienced in small groups. We'll talk about that today, the dynamics of small groups for spiritual practice. And that's what, you know, the Sage Groups really offer that. There's a certain dynamic that takes place in a small group. You meet once a week online, and it's very transformative. You know, so try to get in a group, and again, the sooner you sign up, the better. And to do that, one goes to
wisdomofthesages.com and then click on Sage Groups.
And then you get like a whole layout of all the different Sage Group leaders, unique group of people, wonderful people.
Yeah.
And as well as the different times, and some of the groups have themes, right? Like it's not that the group only talks about this theme, but it's a grouping of people from with a similar interest or similar background. There's women's groups, men's groups. There's an
Parent
LGBTQ
groups, I think.
group. There's a parenting group, I believe. There's even a hardcore group, right?
Yeah.
And some other themes out there that sometimes it's nice to be in a group with people that kind of share something similar to you. Most of the groups are just kind of wide open, just you know, accepting all types of people. So yeah, please consider that as the next step. And now let's turn to our guest, Kripamoya Prabhu. Kripamoya Prabhu, someone I've admired for so long. Kripamoya Prabhu is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, who he first met in England in 1975. He believes that a dynamic spiritual movement can be built through the formation of small groups. And this belief has resulted in his life as a traveling teacher of Krishna Bhakti. Since the 70s, he's been moving around, especially Great Britain, you know, and stopping off and just, you know, coming into people's homes and meeting with people and so on. When he is not visiting community members in their homes or speaking at gatherings, he writes. And that's another thing we're going to talk about. He has a brand new book out. The Guru and Disciple book and the companion volume, 164 questions to ask before initiation, have both been well received. Other books include A Vaishnava Catechism, Moving Forward in Spiritual Life, The Small Groups Handbook, For 100 Autumns, One Life, and a brand new book that's actually not quite out yet, but will be released at the end of this month, called Sanatana Dharma, which we want to discuss today. Kripamoya Prabhu, welcome to Wisdom of the Sage. Welcome back to Wisdom of the Sages.
Good morning, everyone. Lovely to be
And
back.
you'll note that we didn't mention one of your greatest accomplishments. That is the father of Genevieve Harrison, who's been a regular guest, and other wonderful children as well, all equally talented and spiritually dynamic. I don't know how you do it, but you did it over and over.
Should have done it more.
I could do a few more. You're in Scotland right now?
I'm here in Bonnie, Scotland. The sun is shining. I'm at the top of a hill, and the sky is blue.
Nice.
Middle of the day.
What are you up in Scotland doing? You normally live in England, just north of London, near the Bhakti Manor, correct?
Yeah, it's about 300 miles to the south of here, London, and this is Scotland, separate nation out of the 4 nations of the United Kingdom.
We can't figure that out. Okay, Great Britain, United Kingdom, England, the whole thing. I don't think a lot of you people can figure it out.
Just think of them as small groups.
Okay, okay, they're small groups. And you're visiting people up there, checking in
Visiting
with folks?
people, yeah, looking in the ashram. I've visited 3 families already this morning.
Wow,
Pretty much what I do.
that's a beautiful thing. Do you have like a special little vehicle you're traveling around with, or just an ordinary car?
Group mobile.
Is that what it is?
No, I go by train.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, I like to travel that way too.
Yeah.
Why don't we begin by talking about your brand new book, which is published by Penguin, very reputable publisher, right?
Yeah.
It's called Sanatana Dharma. It's a book where you're answering questions. I wanted to just read this real short description on the back of the book. It says, for 50 years, Kripamoya Das has taught the spiritual culture of Sanatana Dharma all over the world. Putting together the questions and doubts he's encountered over the decades, he presents this handbook that readers can turn to anytime on their spiritual journey. So could you tell us, what does Sanatana Dharma mean, and tell us a bit about the book?
This book was it's being published by Penguin India. So the Sanatana Dharma was a change of title to suit the Indian market, for whom the word Sanatana Dharma is a sometimes emotive title. It's but a very hot topic at the moment in India.
Yeah, I think that partially that's due to maybe I don't know, the political situation in India, but
Yeah,
also there seems to be a rising tide and interest in India's spiritual tradition amongst the youth in India. Is that do you find that to be true?
Yeah, because we've had a few terms with Narendra Modi, who's a protagonist of Sanatana Dharma, as the political leader, who is trying to urge the youth of India to return to the spiritual roots. And so that's why it's not only popular, but it's also controversial, because some people want India to be a more secular state, whereas many people believe that a secular state can be there, but with spiritual roots as the foundation, people can lead happier and healthier lives. So Sanatana Dharma, the title means, Sanatana means the eternal, or that which is ever present, foundational. And Dharma, everybody knows, is the way, the path.
Okay.
Our position, existential position.
And so that term, Sanatana Dharma, how has it been used traditionally, or how's it understood?
It's been used as traditionally, philosophically, you could say it's the state of the soul. Sanatana Dharma means the eternal path of the soul, separate from your racial identity, your political identity, your family identity. What are you? What are you?
Those are temporary things, the opposite of Sanatana, which is eternal.
Yeah. So Sanatana is eternal, and to gain true happiness, one follows the Sanatana Dharma to experience the essence of one's spiritual being.
Okay. And speaking of the interest, the rising interest of this, I'm so happy to see you with a book published by Penguin in India, because the past few years now, when you go into a bookstore in India, like how a bookstore will put some books right up front that you see as soon as you walk in the door.
Yeah,
And it seems nowadays when you walk into a bookstore in India, you see it's all our Hare Krishna devotees. Even, it's a lot of them are just Radhanath Swami's disciples. You see Jay Shetty, Gauranga Prabhu, Shubha Vilas, Gaur Gopal. It's like, whoa, these are all people I know.
yeah,
And so I'm looking forward to seeing your book right up there with
yeah.
them.
Well, it'll be in all the airports, if not now, then at the end of the month.
In the bookstores and the airports.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up on Penguin books. Penguin was always a trusted logo.
Yeah.
But it was a trusted logo for a good read, a simple read,
Okay.
that drilled down into the subject, but not too complicated.
If
So
only your
that's-
mother were here to see you, having put down a book on Penguin, huh?
She's looking down.
Okay. So could you just share a bit about the book for our listeners, if they might find an interest in it, what topics are covered, or oh, look at that. It's not great cover too.
Great cover. It's bright orange, goes with the Penguin logo,
Uh-huh.
little drawings. So over the years, I have noticed that people ask many questions, and some of them are similar to questions that other people ask. And so we picked up on those questions. We compiled 300 questions and gave short but thorough answers to them, and put it all in the form of about 35,000 words, which is what Penguin was looking for. Nothing too long, nothing too deep, but something which would be easy to sell, easy to market. So that's what we've come up with. So it's not a high philosophy book. It's a book that answers simple questions, but recurring questions.
Like questions that you've come across in your service.
Yeah.
And could you categorize those into are there certain typical areas that are brought up?
Well, then there's foundational philosophical things, there's practices of spirituality, meditation, connections between Hinduism and yoga and spirituality. There is what I call the sort of Protestant questions, like my mother was religious, but she died of cancer. What do you say to that?
Mm-hmm.
Why should I allow a guru to tell me what to do? I don't want to join. I want to be spiritual, but I don't want to join anything.
What's the temple all about? What is ritual?
What's the temple all about? Why do we ring a bell? Why is the cow sacred? It's the questions like that have to do with rituals.
Sometimes I think to get to the essence, one is you can find the essence through those kind of questions, but also sometimes you just got to deal with a lot of topics first, kind of like handle a lot of the confusing elements before you get down to the root. Huh?
50 years of answering people's questions makes you want to write a book, so they can just say, "Look, read the book."
Okay.
Listen, I don't have much time left. Read the book.
Okay.
Read the book and then come back to me.
Are there any areas in the book, any questions that are especially meaningful to you or dear to you in some way?
Well, obviously I want to share the Bhakti tradition, but you have to get through a lot of questions about basic spirituality before coming to that. I think for the Western reader, many people are interested in this life not being the only one, the possibility of previous lives and future lives. That's a real eye-opener for people, we find. So I dwell on that in one chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that then the Maha Mantra, why does mantra meditation work? What is a mantra? What is meditation? Who is Krishna? What is Krishna? Can I chant? Can I recite the mantras? But I don't want the rituals, but I just want the mantra. Is that okay? Things like that.
Okay. And in answering these questions, I assume, yeah, I know it's something that you must have refined over the years. Perhaps the same question that you would have heard in the 70s or the 80s,
Oh yeah.
you may be answering in a different way now. Maybe partially because of times have changed, or maybe because you've refined your way of communicating.
Do you ever watch the movie Groundhog Day?
I have watched the movie Groundhog Day.
he, he, he
You
wakes
keep
up
trying to get it right.
every day. He tries to get it right, and eventually he gets it right. And
Okay.
every answer to every question is smooth and succinct and illuminating and satisfying for the questioner. So it's
Okay.
a little bit like that. Over 50 years, same questions. You learn which answers work and which often don't.
Okay.
The blunt answers don't work. I find you have to establish an emotional connectivity between you and the person.
Mm.
There's always a question behind the question.
What do you mean by that?
Well, people speak, they want to speak politely because they don't want to insult you.
Okay.
But so they ask a question. You have to be able to read between the lines and see what is the real question going on here.
I see.
In other words, my mother was religious, but she died of cancer. The statement behind that is, I'm really in pain now. Can you do anything for me?
Uh-huh.
Can you speak to my pain? And so the answer that you would give would speak directly to that. So it's a question of, I think, trying to develop emotional sensitivity and trying to ascertain the real question behind the question that's asked.
That's really great.
And there's some questions they come, and we hear a lot in the Bhagavad Gita in our tradition about submissive inquiries. Well, some inquiries are not submissive at all. In fact, one of the questions that I've got in the book is, why do I have to ask respectful questions? You've done nothing to earn my respect. That's one of the questions.
I was about to say that perhaps the British are more polite than the Americans,
Yeah.
but I don't know after that. I was going to say here we wouldn't have to interpret like what's the pain behind the question. They would just in America they just come and say I'm in pain, help. But you know you're sharing this. It's actually making me very eager to read your responses. That to take this something special about a book is that it's taking hopefully a great mind and distilling their thought down into to its most essential communicative thoughts.
Yeah.
And I think this is double boiled because one it's boiled down over your years to where it is now in your head, and then it's boiled down from your head onto the printed page where it's like
Yeah.
you really get the most essential stuff. So I'm
Well,
looking forward to
we
see how
didn't
you answer
filter the
those
questions. We didn't filter the questions.
In what sense?
The hi, Stacy. we didn't filter the questions. The questions which were recorded as
Yeah.
they came into us. We
Okay.
asked people, give us your best questions.
I see.
And these are recorded conversations or written questions that were volunteered. And we thought that we'd I did the same with another book that I wrote, which was 164 questions to ask before initiation. So these are genuine questions that have come to me over 10 years about, gurus and disciples and that sort of area of the culture.
Mm.
So they're unfiltered questions, real questions and real answers.
Well, so as you've been refining, again, with 50 or so years of experience of I don't know what the best word would be, ministering to people or sharing with people.
I'll go with that. Yeah.
Okay, that'll work for you. Yeah, the teachings of Bhakti, the philosophy of ancient India, of books like the Bhagavad Gita and so on. You've been refining the way that you answer the questions, but I suppose you've also been refining the way that you assist people in practicing bhakti. And it's, you speak a lot about the power and the need for small groups, I guess, as opposed to larger groups. Can you speak to me a bit about how you've come to this conviction and your experiences over the years that led you to it?
Yeah, I mean, two ways. I've seen it work myself. I've seen when people take up a spiritual path, they are often required to add something onto their life. And the business of adding something onto your life, which isn't your own culture, it's something that you've gravitated towards, is often, it's transformative, but it's often demanding. And that any type of personal change takes the demands of time and effort, and you get out of it what you put into it. So people need support, whether it's Weight Watching, whether it's a sports challenge, whether it's a 50-mile hike, whatever it is that you're trying to do, whatever challenge you've taken up. It's best done with the support of other people who are in the same line. And what happens then, of course, is that with mutual support, you can get a difficult thing done easily. But then when the group continues, you have an emotional connectivity between the members of the group. And social scientists have said that, the best size for a group is small. They pretty much researched it down into specific numbers, but a small group is the best way to effect change in your life and support other people while they support you.
I do believe that that's all the more true in our current age of social media, and because it seems to me like nowadays, even just to, like, say, read a book, a lot of people need to join a book club or they're never actually going to get it done. Right? It's like, I'll have that book sitting, I'll buy the book, I'll have it sitting there, but I'll have trouble picking it up and reading it, and putting down my phone or putting down my computer and stop, scrolling through things. When my mind is so distracted, when I pick up the book and start to read, I have a hard time keeping the focus there. And if I have a support group and I know that at the end of the week I'm going to be meeting with them and discussing what I read, then it provides the motivation that I need to just even do something as simple as reading a book.
Yes, it does. Except when there's any pressure exerted, when the group's focus becomes what you might call accountability, that can exert an undue pressure that's sometimes unwelcome.
So there's a balance to strike.
Yeah, I think so. If it's supportive, then it really helps. And I've seen that work in, the other groups that we mentioned, and certainly spirituality. And it doesn't seem to be affected by geographical distance. In other words, post COVID, we're all connected by virtual, and it seems to be at least 80% as good as being in the same room as someone.
So in your travels throughout Great Britain, you establish small groups that meet regularly?
Yeah, in Britain we have around 100 groups.
Okay.
And that's over 50 years. It's not as many as we would like. We would like one in every town. And the focus of the group may be kirtan if they come together physically, but it's usually kirtan, discussion of Bhagavad Gita, and socializing, making friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really the entirety of the culture.
Beyond,
there's things called ashrams or retreat centers, but they're less important than the relationships between the people that make up the community. And when they come together in groups, that is the community meeting together.
So beyond the accountability that we spoke about,
Yeah.
or or support in that sense. Are there other types of support or other essential facets of the small group dynamic that are become important?
Yeah. Well, everybody wants to join a tribe. They want to find their tribe. They want to find people who are like them. And age is important. We also find that, when I was younger, I could form a group of 20-year-olds, and now no 20-year-old is interested in me being part of their group.
Okay.
I can be a visiting speaker, but you're not part of the group, man.
Right.
So there's age bracket. There is sometimes a pain bracket, what people are going through, and of course, in some areas you'd have the Bhakti recovery group that
Yeah.
really help, and that's helping people all over the world. And I only experience good things with that, because people, they say birds of a feather flock together. So people who have had the same experiences, who are of the same age, and maybe the same, of course, language, that's also very helpful.
Hmm.
And same level of inquiry.
Okay.
Some people like spiritual socializing. Some people like a more meditative session. Some people meet just for kirtan. No discussion, no philosophy.
Hmm.
That's what they want. So they come, and we do a British thing at the end is tea and biscuits.
There you go.
There you go.
What are those
Kirtan,
scones?
kirtan and tea and biscuits. Oh,
Okay. What about scones? And they bring out that what do they put on, like some kind of whipped cream or something on them, or
No, not whipped, clotted,
clotted cream? Yes,
clotted cream.
I have a British wife. I know these things.
You're well trained.
I'm not actually. I'm not, but I've just heard about them.
Uh-huh. But you have to. Well, some people learn by hearing, and some people learn by
Okay.
tasting, experiencing. You have
She's
to go to the
adapted.
next level.
She's adapted more to me than me to her. I got the advantage because she's generally on American soil, you know.
Yeah. Well, please ask her to take you the next level up.
Okay, I'll do that. Of course. Um, you know, part of the feedback.
Sorry, the other thing
Oh yeah.
is that people when they're transforming their lives, they go through challenges in adapting their time, their schedule,
Yes.
their work life schedule to spiritual practices, adapting their home. They may face challenges with family members. And for me, the most common question is, my partner is interested in all this kind of thing that I'm not,
Oh yeah, that's very common.
very common. And so if they can be in a room with others, they can talk about those challenges and discuss them. What do you do when he says this? How do you behave when she says that?
Hmm.
How do you deal
I
with?
thought we have to do this. Am I wrong about that? You know?
Yeah. So all of that is best discussed by people who are going through the same struggles.
Sure. I want to discuss something more with you, but before I go there, we're kind of leading into that. What I found through the feedback that I've get from the sage groups that are, our Wisdom of the Sages small groups, is that you could potentially go to a large temple or a temple, right, for years, even decades. And perhaps, of course, it depends on the place and the people there, but you might never get the feeling that I can openly share what I'm going through or
Mm.
ask questions that might be, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, sensitive, personal.
Mm.
That might be essential for you to ask, and it may be an essential place for you to inquire. You may not feel comfortable or welcome to
Mm.
present those kind of questions. You walk in and there's a certain format. There's a class with a speaker, and then there's a few minutes for questions at the end. It's a big public arena. You don't know if the questions will be well received, or if you can really even fully ask them. You might go many, many years without feeling free to ask what you need to
Yeah.
ask
Yeah.
or share what you need to share.
Yeah. Well, that's another reason I wrote this book, because hopefully when a person reads it, they'll see their own question there.
Right.
And they'll say, I always wanted to ask that. I didn't want to look stupid.
Right. Yeah.
The Chinese have a saying, that ask a question, you'll be regarded as stupid for 1 hour.
Okay. Don't ask
Don't
the
ask the
question.
don't ask the question, you'll be foolish for life.
Okay. Yeah. So there you go.
But in our present culture, yes, you're right. One great Catholic priest and scholar, he was examining the process of Bhakti yoga, and he said, your community has everything. You have meditation, you have early morning rising, you have yoga, you have
Music,
deep
food.
philosophy. He said, you have, there's one thing you don't have.
Mm.
And he said, it's the confession box.
Uh-huh.
You don't have a sacred spiritual place where you can go and you can say anything you like, and you won't be questioned, or rather, you won't be unfavorably. It's confidential.
It may be confidential, but I don't know if it ever felt too welcoming, at least in my own experience.
Maybe I was never from that background.
Yeah. You don't know.
We need a safe space to do that,
Yeah.
And I think that the business of unburdening yourself and really confessing to doubt or lack of faith, which is a very, very common thing, because when following the path of Sanatana Dharma, Bhakti yoga, there's a huge amount of material to go through. There's a huge amount of changes to your belief structure.
Yeah.
And so you'll accept maybe 10% at first, but what do you do with the other 90%?
Mm-hmm.
You grapple with that, and you've got to go to someone and say, look, I kind of accept this, but I really can't go with this. What do I do? I don't want to be I don't want to be ungrateful because they've given me so much. I don't want to be rude because they're nice people,
Mm-hmm.
but I just can't. So you need somewhere to be with the person who's saying, yeah, I also feel like that.
I would imagine many questions that one may have, that one may fear that they'll be interpreted as challenging or disrespectful too, but they really need to be asked.
Yeah, I think you have to be prepared to ask the quote unquote challenging or disrespectful questions.
Yeah.
And by asking those questions and receiving answers, maybe the person who's answering achieves respect.
Mm-hmm.
Because how to gain respect is by politely responding to questions which may be challenging.
Right.
That was the great secret of the Christian phenomenon which swept the world a few years ago, called the Alpha Course.
Oh, I'm unfamiliar.
Huh?
I'm unfamiliar.
You're unfamiliar. Well, it was. They thought we need to preach the message. We need to preach the gospel, but it has to be done so that we allow people to ask the difficult questions, challenging, disrespectful questions, outright impertinent questions.
Mm-hmm.
We're a big enough spiritual tradition that we can allow people to do that. So there was a talk followed by a quick fire session in which you asked any questions you wanted, and you could be disrespectful, and the person would politely answer. So that won them a lot of. There was no demanding that you should respect our tradition because it's religion, therefore it's worthy of your respect automatically. And so they ushered a lot of people into their fold because people found that very helpful.
It began to work for them. Because, yeah.
It worked.
Nice.
And so the other thing that's very important is for people to have a sense of a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
I may not like Bhakti yoga, but I really like Kaustubha.
Okay.
He's a really nice guy. I've asked him questions. So I'm not going to this particular retreat center or an ashram or a pilgrimage place or India. I'm going to meet with Kaustubha,
Right.
Because I know him, he knows me, and I know I can talk to him and he'll listen. And if you have that relationship with someone, it works.
It is hard to make friends nowadays. Again, because of I believe it has a lot to do with our computerized world and our working far from home, being alienated from family. We're feeling alienated from one another.
Yeah.
The forums that we used to exist in, where we would naturally make friends, don't seem to be quite the same anymore. I know people that are practicing bhakti that have come to retreats of ours that, and then I say, I'll ask them, do you have some friends, that are bhakti yogis that, you kind of, maybe you come to the bhakti center regularly, but do you have friends there?
Mm.
And they'll say, no, I don't. And I'll encourage them, like, you just need to go up and say, hey, I want to be your friend, because they're thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
And the part of the feedback I've gotten from the sage groups is this, the way our sage groups work is that it's a weekly get together. Generally there's an experienced bhakti yogi that's not teaching but facilitating the conversation.
Yeah.
And most commonly the conversation, there'll be like some notes from a topic that was discussed in the previous week on the podcast. So those, can create some dynamic conversations. And of course, there's a check-in and a check-out. Hey, how were you doing the past week? What was it like for you? Any challenges? Any positive things you want to share that you experienced? But we also like to have weeks where we just kind of present questions that are just meant for further bonding, for further getting to know one each other. Like,
Mm.
what's your favorite? Who's your favorite kirtan leader, and what was the
Yeah.
best festival you've ever been to, or things like that, that just get people sharing from their own heart. And you go through 16 weeks with a group of 7 or 8 people, sharing like this, and you really get to know each other, and you actually, each other in a way that you might have never known someone just by going to temple for years and years.
Mm.
And you've made 6 or 7 or 8 friends. And then after that 16 weeks, we take about a month break, and then we start the next group, and you do it again. Well, now you've made another 8 friends, and then you do it again, you made another. Now you got 24 friends in the world of bhakti yoga that you can reach out. Some of them will become close friends, people, and then these people meet in person, and it's very special, when they get together in person. So that aspect is been really, really wonderful for the members. Beyond that, I wanted to maybe we're shifting format here, and we're going from my interviewing you to my getting your input on some of the further developments we want to do here. Can I do that?
Oh, please, please.
Okay.
I'm excited.
Okay.
I'm excited about the sage groups.
Okay. Well, if you ever want to be a Sage Group host, I know you're a busy man, but you could be one of the group leaders if you would love to have you, or maybe you could attend our meetings sometimes. And sometimes we have meetings of the Sage Group leaders,
Oh,
and we
right.
we share there, and it would be great to have you included in those meetings and hear your thoughts.
I'll sit quietly in a corner.
No, no, no. But here's we're trying to really create a network of care. A network that, even if you're entirely isolated, even, you might be living in a city even where there's a temple and so on, and you might feel isolated. But even, let's say theoretically you are isolated, you're out in the middle of nowhere, there's no temples around, you don't know anybody that practices bhakti yoga. Just by coming onto the podcasts and getting in touch with it, and if it's resonating with you, if you feel like, oh, these are truths, this is a practice, this is a spiritual practice I want to engage with, I want to make my own practice, then the sage groups are there. That now you have your opportunity to ask questions, to share, to experience bhakti yoga with a group of people. That's for sangha, right? Especially that's for a sense of community. But we also want to have more formalized learning, real training and learning. And for that, we're developing something we may call the Sage Academy, which would be courses that you would take online. We want to design them in a way where they're really approachable and really relevant. But we want them to be, even much of it to be tested, not like super demanding hard tests, but tested in a way where we're making sure that we're getting the essence, the most important points. So we want that to be not academically intimidating to anyone, but effective, that you actually learn, you know, you really learn what you need to learn. When you and I joined, when you and I got involved in Bhakti, we would join a temple, and you go through a program where you get trained in all this. You get an immersion. Nowadays, very few of the people that are becoming Bhakti yogis are moving into ashrams, and they need to get this somehow. So we want to try to provide that through that academy. Then another thing we want to do, and that academy, hopefully, even by this fall, we may begin to release the initial courses, if not early next year, so hopefully. But we also want to do something that kind of recognizes, we might call this like sage care, for instance, and it recognizes that people practice bhakti yoga up until they run into some bump, some hurdle, something kind of, at some point, it becomes difficult, or they get distracted in a particular way, or they lose their hope in some way, or they get turned off by something that may even be a misunderstanding. If we could, through the sage groups, kind of survey those groups and hear from them, what are the most pressing issues, or what is it that you need some assistance with, some help with, in order for you to continue to go deeper into this practice. And we have a list of about 25 things. You know, they may be like psychological, like I struggle with depression, and I've been practicing bhakti for 1.5 years now, and I'm still struggling with depression. So maybe this doesn't work for me, or something. You know, maybe something like that. It may be practical. I just don't have the time to do this practice. You know, you have to chant 16 rounds when you do this. That takes about 2 hours, and I just don't have 2 hours free that's going to make this work for me, you know. Or it may be practical in the sense like, you know, I have 3 kids, and I don't have no idea what my responsibility is as a bhakti yogi in terms of parenting. Am I supposed to make them chant every day? Am I supposed, you know, I'm clueless as far as what to do here. It may be like cultural, like I've read these books and they've said some things, you know, about, it may be about, you know, gender roles, or some other, you know, attitudes, cultural ideas that seem very foreign to me, and I don't know if I can invest my mind and heart in them. There may be like a lot of different reasons, you know, addiction. Now, of course, addiction is something that we do already have, you know, a nice program in place for with the Bhakti Recovery Group. But we would like to create a team that's a team that would combine people that are devotees and also professional counselors in different areas, but also just devotees that are good communicators that can help people, kind of what you're doing in your book, I think, help people understand these things more clearly. You know, answer questions clearly in ways that they'll be like, oh, I didn't know that you didn't have to chant 16 rounds, that you could still practice this, you know, even if you're not. Or I never understood, I never heard it explained that way, and now it makes more sense to me. So people that can communicate well like that, and that this team would just determine what's the best format to address this need. Like, it may be that we just need to create a video where we explain these things, that becomes part of an archive, you know, for the future. Or maybe that let's say something, even some sensitive topic, like let's say amongst like 300 Sage Group members, there were like 15 of them that had been, let's say, sexually abused in some way. And maybe they struggle with that in different ways. Is this my karma? Is it my own fault that this happened to me? Or, you know, it's created fear or resentment and anger in me that makes it hard for me to believe in God fully, or whatever it might be. This group might say, for these people, we're going to create a group that meets together once a month with a professional counselor in that area that's going to, you know, work with these people, you know. And so whatever the format, it might be that an essay just needs to be written, or whatever it is, they would determine the best format to address that need, and just try to effectively help, you know, large groups of people pass through over the hurdles that we may find on our path to practice bhakti.
Yeah.
I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Well, I would have more support for that because it's real, and it's something which is absolutely required. I think perhaps the first generation of Bhakti Yoga practitioners in the West has naturally been concerned with preserving a legacy or establishing the foundational beliefs and ideas and culture in their own language. And it's up to the next generation, hopefully the tail end of this generation,
Mhm.
to bring about dealing with the real challenges. I think there's an ideal and a real.
So the
We
first
talk about
generation, they did so much to establish the ideal,
the ideal,
and
yeah,
now the next generation has to deal with the real so that we can come up to the ideal.
the real, yeah.
Yeah,
The
deal
real,
with
the
the real.
real is that this is where we are.
Yeah.
That may be where we would like to be eventually, some of us. But this is where we are now. Let's deal with that so I can move forward. Because that's the tradition of Sanatana Dharma. The Vedas deal with people of all types in all conditions, and there's always a prescription. Like a doctor. A
Yeah.
doctor can give you a prescription for your condition so that you can spiritually move forward. So it's up to us to be the spiritual doctors for the future, I think. But each of us can be doctors for each other.
Yeah, of course, traditionally there's a guru there, in a
Yeah.
practitioner's, now in ISKCON, there's kind of a hurdle to get over because I may not be ready to follow all the vows I need to be formally initiated by a guru.
Yeah.
And that may create a gap that I can't get across where I need help. I need personalized, tailored help, but I'm not getting it because I haven't been able to make that full commitment that's needed for me to have that connection.
Mm, mm. Well, uh, when you look for a person who's a spiritual guide, an encourager, uh, there's always one available who just have the answers. I do believe. I've seen this so many times that when people reach out, they're never alone.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's someone who's a legacy holder of the tradition, or
Right.
a full representative of Bhakti, etc., like that, in a formal commitment, that's one thing. But in the small groups, sometimes answers come from the most unexpected mouths.
Sure.
And I've seen how people can support this. The principle of guru is that God speaks through people that will be able to help you.
Right.
And that may be someone in your group. So I guess it's the old story of four rabbis in the forest, they all treated you. You don't know that one?
No.
I'll tell you, four grumpy old men.
Okay.
No one was joining the ashram because they're all very grumpy with each other.
The
'Cause
shul
none
or
of
the
them,
synagogue or
like sure, something like that.
okay.
Anyway, so then one boy had a dream and he came to them and he said, I got to tell you, one of you is the Messiah. I've had a dream, God has told me. So each rabbi was looking at the other three and saying, well, I know it's not me, but it could be him. So they all started serving each other,
Huh.
listening to each other. And eventually their happiness grew so much that a lot of new people wanted to join.
Okay.
The tendency is in a small group,
Yeah.
if you see each other as the possible mouthpiece of the divine, with the possible answer to your question, then often that opens up a channel to really, really help you. I've seen it work so many times.
Mm.
It's a sort of collective, it's sort of a collective guru within the group.
Sure.
That guru principle works.
Through
It's magic. It is magic.
I think that also something that's kind of somewhat recently risen up in the awareness of Raghunath Prabhu and myself is that we see, because of course, again, both he and I, like you, when we got into bhakti so many decades ago, we would move into temple, there'd be a full immersion, you get all the training that you need. And that progression in the path of bhakti from first there's some faith, I think these people are onto something, that this is making a lot of sense, that there's something beautiful about this, and so on. to the next stage with sadhu sangha, you know, where you're associating with people that practice it. You're mixing with them and you're learning from them and being inspired by them, being blessed by them. Then you come to the stage called bhajana kriya, which means now you're meant to be guided on your practice. You know, you're meant to, and that comes with commitment. And so when we hit that stage, we had a guru, and we had a guru that not only knew, you know, that when Raghunath was initiated, he was his guru's first disciple. Okay. When I was initiated, my guru had hundreds of disciples, but not thousands. He knew me. He knew my name. He knew about my life. He was there to instruct me. And even if your guru was somewhat, you know, distant physically, still you were in a temple where there were plenty of people that were ready to give you shiksha, ready to give you instruction, to, you know, help you understand when to wake up, when to go to sleep, what books to read, what books not to read, you know, how much to practice this, what is your service. All of that was given to you, and your spiritual life would just like take off, you know. But nowadays, because people aren't joining these temples, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But once they hit that stage where the faith reaches a certain point where they're ready for instruction and they're ready to be, you know, practice with commitment, we feel we have to be really, we really have to do what we can now to help people pass through that. And part of that may mean getting that instruction from a person that you admire, like a guru, but without that some level of commitment, but maybe not that 16 round 4 principle level. Maybe that's again an ideal that we're working towards. But I'm never going to get there if I can't pass through this stage right now where I'm sorry, I'm a single mother with 3 kids and a full-time job, and I just don't see how I can chant 16 rounds, you know, and okay, maybe you need to commit to, you know, 4 rounds, you know, or it's that kind of help. We want to see that if we can provide that. And again, create like a network of care. You know?
Well, the great teacher, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he said that if a person chants 4 rounds, he said he regards that as a commitment, as a life commitment. And he said, and you may chant more than 4 rounds according to your taste.
Okay.
So he created 500 small groups in his region just simply by traveling around, starting with kirtan and then proceeding to higher.
That was his starting point in a sense.
Yeah.
The first commitment.
We have to start where we are.
Yeah.
So the single mom with 3 kids, what can she do? Yeah. And then when she knows what her level of practice might be, there's always a person who can give her some guidance. I think there's sort of a pyramid. If you imagine a pyramid. In fact, Srila Prabhupada said at one time, he said, how can one guru, one teacher teach thousands? He said he teaches 10. Okay. He teaches 10. And each of those teach 10. And each of those teach 10. And each of those teach 10. And in that way, one teacher is teaching thousands. And at each level down, the person is uniquely qualified to look after that small group. I see.
I think I begin to see where your inspirations for small groups has come from. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much for the service that you're doing. We're looking forward to your new book, which can be pre-ordered right now on Amazon. People have been doing it on our chat board even right during the show.
And I'll put that link in the show notes.
And that link will be in the show notes.
You're too kind.
Thank you so much for joining us, Prabhu. We look forward to having you back again. We're definitely looking forward to reading your book. And I'm going to be reaching out as we try to develop these further initiatives. We'd love to have your input.
Thank you. Do all I can.
Okay. Say hello, send our love to all the devotees in Scotland.
Hello indeed.
I'm sure they must be a wonderful group of people.
Scotland salutes you.
Okay. We salute them back. Thank you everyone for joining us this morning. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Eastern, right, Mary?
Yeah, that's right.
And we'll be jumping back into Srimad Bhagavatam, a very fascinating place there. Anything else you'd like to share?
The canto.
We're in the last chapter of the 7th canto. I'm looking forward to 8th cantos. Oh, it's got some great stuff coming up too. Anything else we should share, Mary?
that's it.
Okay. So then we will see you tomorrow. Thank you again, everybody. And as Raghunath is always fond to say, what does he say? Let the magic continue to flow.
Flow. Very well.
All right. See you tomorrow.